I'm your host, Doreen Steenland, and today I'd like to welcome our guest, Sarah R. Moore. Okay, so as professionals, we spend our days, no matter what profession you are in, we spend our days caring for everyone else. And often we come home without energy. So how can we start to show up for ourselves when we're drained dry at the end of the day?
That is such a good question, and it's so relatable, particularly for those who are in any sort of caregiving industry, whatever that may be. You spend your days just pouring your heart out, loving on people, taking care of them, helping them, but who's helping you? And you may end up feeling so empty and depleted that you feel like you have nothing left, especially if you then have a family who's also expecting you to show up for them and be emotionally present, maybe even playful sometimes. And it can feel like, excuse me, I don't have that in my back pocket. I just don't have that to give right now. So first thing we need to do is let's name it. Let's acknowledge this is really hard. We know that there is a mental health crisis out there. It's worse than it's been historically, and we tend to frame it in terms of children, but honestly, it's a lot of adults too. So first of all, just acknowledging this is hard and I need some support is going to be an incredible first step towards making a change. What's not working is continuing to suck it up every single day, continuing to say, I'll just do it again tomorrow. I'll find a way. I don't know how, but I just keep showing up. Well, that's eventually going to lead to incredible burnout, if not worse. So a couple of things we need to do. Number one, as I mentioned, we just need to acknowledge, I need some help here. But many of us say, I don't have time to go to therapy myself, or I don't have time to do that, so-called unicorn of self-care. In fact, many of us, when we hear that term these days, we think, oh, forget it, I'm out. That's so cliche. I have never spontaneously ended up in a bubble bath. It's just not going to happen. So we need to reframe what that looks like.
Just pause right there for a second. A few things that I want to highlight that you said. You basically said that if we continue in the cycle of survival mode, basically that's what it is. It's autopilot survival mode, thinking we're just going to white knuckle it and get through the next day. We're going to get through this day. We're going to get through the next day. When we continually live in that state, it builds up and stores in your nervous system. And it is not good for you long term. We weren't created to stay in survival mode chronically, right? So the next thing that you said that I loved is that bubble bath does not magically appear. You might see it on Instagram. You might see those Instagram stars in their bubble bath having a little talk with you. But guess what? That's not real. So how can we do this? I just wanted to highlight those two things because that is real talk that you're saying, Sarah. You're saying real life things here. And I want to highlight that. And what do you see as a possible solution?
A couple of things. Number one is we have to acknowledge that we matter too. Oftentimes we are in the cycle of prioritizing other people. Perhaps our job calls us to do that. Perhaps our family calls us to do that. But we get to say, I get to take up space too. I also matter. And I actually have never liked the analogy of we have to put on our own oxygen mask before we can put on anybody else's. Because guess what? If I'm in that situation, I'm going to be grabbing my child's just like I am myself. It's just not relatable to me. So it's not I'm going to choose myself instead of them. It's not I'm going to choose them instead of me. It's how can I find a way to take up space so that I also get oxygen in this situation. So what that might look like in very practical.
Just wait a second. You're dropping these bombs, these gold nuggets that I just want to lift up because you're just so natural at this and they're just flowing right out of you. But I want to pause and say, you matter. It's not either or. It's both and. You matter too. we as women often think that everyone else has to come first and we come last. And we have been programmed by society to put ourselves last. And that is wrong. That is why we're seeing the problems that we're seeing right now. And we're feeling all of this stress and anxiety because that was not the way it was meant to be. You matter. And it's not either or. All right, Sarah, go ahead.
Sure, and thank you. I think it does need to be underscored because it's such a paradigm shift for so many of us who have this wiring. So what it gets to look like in real life in practical terms, couple of things. I already mentioned we just need to acknowledge it because honestly, for a lot of us, even being able to verbalize, this is too much for any single person to handle is a huge step because we have been so pre-wired to think that no, I'll just suck it up. I can handle it another day. So that's the biggest thing we can do just to get the ball rolling. But from there, in practical terms, we get to say, it's not necessarily about doing more or finding ways to take care of myself in addition to everything I'm already doing. It is going to be more about what can I release? Somebody told me a long time ago that she has 3 columns on her to-do list. And I wish I could cite the source, but I can't do that right now. But she has 3 columns. It's what has to get done today, what has to get done this week, and what do I hope to get done someday. And it was such a paradigm shift for me, especially as a working professional, because I often have the mentality, I need to do everything today. Well, guess what that does to anxiety? Guess what that does to productivity? It actually sets us back. So if we can start by saying, not everything is an emergency, and there are some things that I can cut out of my to-do list. It's not that I'm going to move them into the never column, although maybe we have some of those too. I want to learn to play the piano. I don't play the piano yet, but that's not something I need to get done, and it might go into my never bucket. But there are so many things that we can say, this is not actually an emergency. This is something that I can take off my list today. Maybe I don't need to go to the grocery store today. Maybe I don't need to take my child to that lesson today. If they're not getting something out of it, if I'm not getting something out of it, if it's not actually benefiting our family, maybe I can find some ways to pretend it is 1975 all over again. I can go back to pre-phones, over-scheduled and say, what does it feel like to just be for a little while, even if it's 30 seconds. What if I just say for the next 30 seconds, I'm not going to do a darn thing. I'm just going to be. And honestly, it might feel really uncomfortable because I don't know about you, Doreen, but I am chronically busy. While I'm doing one thing, I'm thinking about the other 5 that need to get done. But it's, it may tie in for some people to mindfulness practices, can be phenomenal. But if some people hear that and go, I don't have time to meditate or to pray for 20 minutes a day or whatever, start with 30 seconds. That might be just the reset you need just to go, oh my goodness, where am I feeling the stress in my body? And can I kind of bring some oxygen into that part, visually, energetically, whatever you want to call it, and just focus on my shoulders have been up at my ears for the past, however long. Let me just drop those. But that 30-second practice can open up, even as I'm discussing it with you right now, I'm feeling more peaceful. And when we can do this predictably, it becomes less about the bubble bath and more about, I'm in my body right here and now, right in this second. I'm going to get myself out of my sympathetic nervous system fight or flight, and I'm just going to be, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable because it's so foreign to me after all these years of pushing through.
So good. Okay, I have to highlight a lot of things here that you said. The first nugget that I want to pull out of this is something I see in organizations also, hospital systems, educational systems, in all of our organizations. we add more policies and never take any dysfunctional or old ones away. And that increases the strain on the workers. And it's the same in our homes, right? When we keep piling things on without removing things, we're just escalating and increasing the stress that we're feeling. So that's the first nugget I want to point out, because it's not only for you at home, it's for your organizations. So if you are an organization listening right now, I know you have great intentions to change policies and do things, but the question to be asking yourself is, as we add this, what else could go? What is no longer serving us? What is no longer serving our employees before we start adding things? That's the first thing. The second thing I love that you said is about being. It's about being present like it was 1975. I love that line because so true. Every extra second we have, we pick up the phone and we fill our space with these devices, and that creates disconnection from our bodies, from our minds, from our people, from our environment, and from the present.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. And honestly, it affects all of our relationships too, because I am so scattered with all of the things I feel I need to get done. What happens when I get home? My nervous system is holding on to my feelings of scatteredness, and I haven't relaxed yet. So what do I have to give my family? Zilch. I have nothing to give them. If anything, I now have all of the things I didn't get done because I was too distracted to get them done during the day still on my mind and my unfinished to-do list. So then when my partner or my child comes and says, hey, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And it might be for a very legitimate reason. It can be, mommy, will you read me a story? It might be, I need a snack. It might be, hey, what's for dinner tonight? There comes a point where we crumble, and that doesn't serve our relationships. So being present, even if it's when I pull in the driveway at the end of the day, I'm going to take 30 seconds to finish listening to that song I like. And then I'm going to take another 30 seconds, turn the car off, and just be in the car. One of my favorite sayings is, if it's not an emergency, it's not an emergency. But we often act as if things are emergencies. I'm home, I need to run inside, I need to start doing these things. But when I can take that moment and just be in my body, even if it feels uncomfortable, and I keep saying that because we're out of practice, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Guess what I have to offer my family? I have just a little bit more presence, so that when my child or my partner comes up to me, I'm not saying, oh, just a second, I need to finish ordering groceries. Just a second, I need to finish this phone call. Just a second, I need to, which then translates to them as, I guess that's more important to you than I am, which puts them on the defensive, so that when we do put our stuff down and we give them our attention, they're feeling defensive. And then we say, well, why do I bother? I tried. I came home. I tried to be present, but now you're grouchy with me. I don't want this. So now I get defensive. And we start in a relationship deficit.
Oh boy. You said so much there that I want to highlight, right? We're talking about this whole process of being present in the moment with your family and noticing that when we're coming with energy deficits, you know what you feel like. You're snappy, you're distracted, you're multitasking, and your brain is going back and forth. And that back and forth is even wasting more energy. I just want you to know that. We think we're being efficient and we're not. Neuroscience has proven that just drains your energy more. But by focusing on one thing at a time, we are able to better conserve our energy. Another thing, you were dropping all of these neuroscience tips in there. As a fellow neuroscience geek over here, I'm hearing about the breathing, the noticing your body, the listening to that song in the car. All of those things are ways to get you to the part of your brain where you can connect with the loved ones in front of you, where you can see things from a bigger perspective, where you see possibilities instead of all the limitations that are in front of you, right? So all of those little nuggets you dropped, those are little neuroscience tricks. Try them out. Sarah is loaded with them. All right.
Thank
I,
you.
I, I think I went on a little tangent there. Sorry about that.
No, I love it. And I love how you called out multitasking. Let's go there for a second, because you're absolutely right. From a neuroscience perspective, there's no such thing as multitasking. What actually happens is that the brain is single tasking way too fast. So we actually do end up decreasing our productivity because we are asking too much of our brain. So it really does help to say things like, all right, when I get home or when I'm in the presence of my family, I am going to take this phone, I'm going to physically turn it off, or if I can't turn it off because perhaps I'm on call or whatever the case may be, I'm going to stick it in a drawer where I can still hear it, but I am less likely to go over and simply tap it to see, do I have any notifications? But having it out of sight doesn't completely take it out of mind, but it takes it out of our mind's priority. And therefore, we are more able to be just that much more present, so that when our child does come up, or when our partner comes up and says, hey, I need something, we don't feel that snappiness that you mentioned. We don't feel that immediate anxiety rise up of, I'm already too busy. The snacks are right there. Dinner's later. We'll figure it out. All of these things that our nervous system is doing, basically, all it's trying to do is say, I don't feel emotionally safe right now. It's simply our limbic system saying, I crave safety. I crave security. And the more bombarded I feel, the less safety I have to offer to myself or to others. So our job as a parent, as a partner, is to say, what do I need in order to feel emotionally safe right now? Because when I feel safe, and I'm going to pull in a little bit of polyvagal theory here too, I can get up into what's called my ventral vagal state, where I feel empowered. I feel playful. I feel connection with those around me. And from here, I'm at my height emotionally. I feel like I've got this. I can handle it. If somebody wants that snack, if somebody wants my attention, I can respond from a place of empowerment and safety. And it no longer feels like a threat to my nervous system. Instead, it feels like an opportunity to connect with somebody else in a positive and meaningful way. And that's where we want to spend most of our time.
Yes, so good. I love it. And so what you're saying is we are connecting to that area in our brain where joy and peace is.
Yes.
Where connection happens effortlessly. And we're living in the present in that part of our brain. And we could still solve problems in the future, but from the present place. We're not stuck back at work with the stress in our body. We're not thinking of what's coming tomorrow. We're right here with our people right now. And I know this to be true. When I have my phone next to me on the couch, let's say we're watching a movie as a family. If the phone is next to me on the couch, I pick it up and I'm checking it all the time. But if I put it in its docking station by the side door, which is where we dock our phone, it's out of sight. And I tend to look for it and it's not there, but then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm here right now. And then I regather myself and I'm here and I'm watching the show. I'm connecting with my family. I'm playing a game. I'm having a conversation, whatever. I'm here right now. And I don't get to worry about my phone at this point.
Yes, and you just touched on another really important thing. Our phones are giving us artificial dopamine, the
Yeah.
artificial feel-good chemicals that course through our bodies. They give us the quick fix that our brain seems to want, but really it's rooted in addictive behavior, because what happens when this artificial dopamine hits is that although the dopamine itself is real, it's not a natural source of it. We're supposed to be getting our dopamine fix from relationships, from positive experiences, from things like that. So when we take the time to just move the phone a little bit farther away, we might actually feel that, and I picked up from you when you were looking around for your phone on the couch, it's almost like this feeling of panic. Where did I put it? What did I do with it? I hope I didn't lose it. Even though we know we haven't left the house, we didn't lose our phone, right? But it's this common feeling of, oh no, my social connection has been cut off. And that is only going to trigger more anxiety. But the more we practice walking away from the phone, the more our body gets to do what I call a dopamine reset, where our body will start looking for that feel-good feeling from the sources that it was intended to get them from. It's supposed to feel better. We are supposed to feel better from human interaction. We are supposed to feel better from taking those moments to say, I just did something and I feel really good about it. Maybe I read a book and I liked it and I put it down. All of these feelings, all of these chemicals can exist naturally in our bodies. And here's the beauty of it. Our brains also have reward centers in them, where when we do something that feels good, we want more of it. And that's part of the reason phones are so addictive, because our brain says, oh, I like this, how this feels, I want more of it. So here I am scrolling, but I can get that from other sources, i.e. my family as well. So if I have an interaction with my child or with my partner, where I can say, I like how that feels, here's a virtuous cycle. My brain says, reward center, light up. I like how it feels when I have a positive interaction with this person. I want more of that. And over time, with practice, I end up repairing the connections with my family. So I am less likely to be snappy. I am less likely to be in my dorsal dive status where I'm just shutting down and want nothing to do with anybody. But instead, I'm responding from this ventral vagal state of connection, of dopamine, of my brain's reward center saying, I like you and I want more of you, not more of the device that's stealing my attention away from you.
Yes, yes. And we all know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Belonging and safety and all of those things. And all of those things can come from our relationships that are right in front of us. We don't need to go to the counterfeits of a phone and fake likes and fake followers and yeah, you have lots of friends on Facebook. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, you have life is now, and you have real life right in front of you, people with you. And I am preaching to the choir here. Okay. I just want to say, guilty as charged. If my family's watching this, don't be saying hypocrite, hypocrite. Yes, I know. I am working on it. I am a work in progress. But this is what it is to actually be present, right? And being present is different than what we have been trained to do in our society.
Yes, yes, exactly. And when, and let me take this to a parenting analogy for a second. That's what peaceful discipline is about.
Yes.
But when we are more present with our children, we are less likely to look at what we see on the surface of their behavior and instead get curious about what's going on beneath the behavior. Now, this can apply to good behavior too. Instead of seeing my child is really happy right now, everything's going great, I have the emotional capacity to say, I wonder why things are going so well right now so that I can recreate more of it. Similarly, yet on the other side, when their behavior is not so great, we get to be curious enough because we're coming from a place of curiosity, expansion, empowerment. We get to say, this behavior is just what I'm seeing on the surface. There's a whole iceberg here though. I wonder what's going on for them. And I have the emotional capacity to look beneath the surface and get to the underlying needs and address those in a connection-based way instead of just being reactive to them. But this is why I don't talk about fixing kids' behaviors.
Oh,
I talk about understanding children's behaviors, but it really needs to start by showing up for ourselves first. And none of that can happen unless we find ways to slow down, even if it's just for those 30 seconds we were talking about.
so good. I love so many things that you said there. And yes, the parenting thing, we often see a behavior and we want to correct it and fix it, right? When instead, if we took a position of curiosity, it's connecting. It's a fun exploration, right? To see what's really happening and how you can best support your kid to help them to be the best that they could be, right? And I always say, like in a lot of my work, I say you have to connect to affect, right? If we want to affect that behavior or a relationship, we need to connect first. We can't start without the connection. Otherwise, it's met with resistance and fight, right? Because it's that negative input to the brain. It sends the person right away into a fight, flight, or freeze where they're in threat mode. And nobody learns from threat mode, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Just to make it real, if I can, just I'll share a very brief
Yeah,
example.
please.
Shared in my own home last night. And no, I don't do this perfectly. And yes, we need practice to get this right. But I
Yes.
noticed that my daughter, who's almost 10 years old, wasn't coming to bed, and it was time to bed, but she was drawing a picture, and I said, hey, it's time to head upstairs. What did she do? She went to the drawer and got some more colored pencils and went right back to the table. So
Mhm.
it would have been tempting
Yeah.
from a place of looking just at the behavior to say, hold the phone, this is not okay, and get into accusational mode and have more conflict in that moment. But
Yes.
because I was in a more empowered state last night, which I'm not always, but I was in a more empowered state last night, I kind of saddled up next to her at the table and I said, I'm curious what's going on for you. I'm noticing that it seems hard to come to bed right now. And she said, yeah, I'm feeling kind of disconnected and I don't want to go to bed. It doesn't, I just don't feel good about going to bed. And the more I dug, it took a couple of minutes and some back and forth. But as it turned out, she had had a really, really scary nightmare the night before. And she was afraid of going to sleep because she didn't want to have another nightmare. And knowing that, I was able to show up in a supportive and compassionate way and help her get up the stairs peacefully through the lens of connection so that she didn't have to be scared going to sleep. And it worked for both of us. And if I had only looked at how dare you go get more pencils, that
Yes.
wouldn't have helped address her underlying fear. All it would have done is compounded it. So just
Yes.
because it's real and hopefully that's relatable to somebody out there, it happens to adults too. When we're not behaving perfectly, it's always for a good reason. So I
Yeah.
talk a lot about this in the book, Peaceful Discipline, but just wanted to share that real live example of how important it is to slow down, but we can't do that if we're only in reactive mode.
So good, because really you could have missed an opportunity there to connect with your daughter and give her the support that she needs. And that's all we want to do as parents, right? We want to be the best parents we could be for our kids. We want to show up for them and support them to be the best human beings that they could be in the world, right? And so if we miss these opportunities and we make it a battle, we're losing ground. We're not sticking with our goals of what we want to create. And I know that that's what you want as parents because I've heard that from you,
Yeah,
right? So we know we're not making assumptions here. We all want the best for our kids. No parent wants to give their kids um, things that they don't need, any extra baggage to carry through life. So being present in the moment and getting curious and connecting so that we can affect is ground zero. And that starts, as Sarah said, by taking care of yourself and being present in the moment by slowing down. So
exactly. Yes. I
So
have
many good things. Can you leave us with one last tip? Because I want to honor the time of our viewers, because this is to decrease stress, not to increase the stress. So as much as we could talk all day, I want to be faithful to them. So what last minute tips might you leave for our viewers today?
Yes, and thank you for asking. I talk about it in Peaceful Discipline, but one of the first things that I want you to do is just be so gentle with yourself, because you make sense. A lot of people talk about, oh, I shouldn't be so sensitive, or I don't know why I'm so angry all the time, or I don't know why. You know what? You make sense. Everything that you're feeling, everything you have experienced is contributing to how you are right now. So if you have a day where you snap at your family, if you have a day where you're overloaded, if you have a day where you say, I don't have 30 seconds, I can't possibly do this, you know what? Give yourself grace, because the gentler you are with yourself, the more you get to acknowledge that this really is hard sometimes, the more emotional safety you'll create for yourself. You're not wrong for any of these things. As I mentioned a little while ago, your nervous system is constantly asking the question, am I safe right now? And when we're having these big feelings ourselves, we are reinforcing the message of a lack of safety. But I want you to know, as I said a second ago, you make sense. Everything about you makes sense. So when you have those tough moments, just soften, just imagine parenting yourself with your most gentle version of yourself to say, I've got you and I'm going to see you through this. And just give yourself the emotional tenderness that you probably always have needed in your life, because you deserve it and you do get to take up space exactly as you are.
So good. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming.